What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson, here, jumping right into today's show, kicking things off with a rumor of significance and a piece of news that involves the Chicago Bulls head coach, Billy Donovan. It is said that the Knicks' request to interview Billy Donovan has been denied by the Chicago Bulls. This is a no-brainer in my eyes. I think Billy Donovan is the guy that you want to keep around for the foreseeable future with this team and the younger direction that they've headed with their roster. I think Billy Donovan has made a career off of developing younger players. He did so at Florida, was very successful there, and has gotten the Bulls into a better position than they were a few years ago. They finished last year strong. We talked about that in a previous episode. Having that strong finish to the year and seeing the improvements in guys like a young Kobe White is a testament to what Billy Donovan does for this team. So I just think with his acumen and the way he coaches and the way he represents this franchise as a whole, it's a very smart decision for the Bulls to shut down that request almost immediately. I know the Knicks reached out to a number of different teams on their coaches as well, the Mavericks and Jason Kidd. They shut that down. Minnesota and Chris Finch, they shut that down as well. And I believe they reached out to Atlanta about Quinn Snyder. All coaches that, when you look at that group of guys, are very, very solid NBA head coaches. So it speaks to the fact of what they thought of Billy Donovan and the value they think he could bring to a Knicks team that is going to be hungry coming off that Eastern Conference Finals appearance to end this past season. So wanted to kick off today's show by profiling that's of significance to the Bulls. So I think that's a good piece of news there. As far as the upcoming NBA draft, have another guy I wanted to take a look at. It's Kaman Malawak, the big-time center out of the University of Duke. The 18-year-old freshman had moments in this past year's season that made him, a very, very highly touted NBA prospect moving into this year's draft. And he certainly showed flashes of what he could develop into at the next level. Duke had a great year. He contributed to that. At 7'2", 250 pounds, this guy's a house. Out of South Sudan, he's a monster. This guy has all the intangibles for what an NBA superstar could be at that size. I think the high-powered player would bring something to the Bulls that they haven't had since probably Gafford. And that's not saying too much. I mean, Gafford's a good player, but you're looking for a superstar at that position. Kaman Malawak could develop into that. And the reason I bring that up, The Ringer, a well-known news outlet, had released a mock draft here in the last few days that had the Washington Wizards snagging Derek Queen at the 6th spot there. And if that happens, you're going to see a couple of the names in the top 10 or so of the draft kind of switch positions there. So it's widely believed that Derek Queen's going to go in the top 12, but top 6 would be a stretch. I don't think a lot of outlets and people are projecting him to go that high. So I think, if Malawak by any chance slips down to 12, or if you have a chance to kind of move up a spot and you really want him, I don't know if the Bulls will be in that pool, but you could move up to grab him if you wanted. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Kaman Malawak, a heck of a ball player there. And it will be interesting to see how that shakes out on the night of June 25th. Jumping into another piece of significance for the Bulls and a guy we've continued to talk about, and it's becoming more and more likely that he is going to part ways with the Chicago Bulls coming up here. That's Nikola Vucevic. Could a move to Boston work for him? I think it would definitely work for Vooch himself and going to an organization in Boston that's been a powerhouse in the East the last few years. I think plugging him in there would be no problem for Boston. And with 1 year left on that deal, I think it's something that they would be considering. I think you pair him with, Jason Tatum and the likes of Jaylen Brown there and some of the other star players. It would definitely benefit them. And it's no doubt that Boston, it was reported as they were making their playoff run that if it ends early, which they had a disappointing end of the season, that things are going to be shaken up with that organization. I think Kristaps is going to be on the move, and that's a guy I kind of wanted to talk about with you guys. could the Bulls center a Vucevic move to Boston around the 28th overall pick that Boston holds, as well as Kristaps? Now, you would probably, if you're the Bulls, have to give up another young player or two in return for that. But I think Kristaps is an interesting case here because at 29 years old, he's shown a lot of promise in his career and was an intricate part, when he came back from another injury to the Celtics championship run a few years ago. This guy's just been hampered with different stuff throughout his career, though. He had this weird virus that kept him out for a majority of this past season, and he couldn't seem to come back from that and didn't look the same when he did return in the playoffs. He just looked exhausted, and he looked sick still, so that was an interesting thing. I just think this deal for Vooch makes a lot of sense, though. If the Bulls, again, talking about making big swings, on a 29-year-old may not be optimal just because he's a bit longer in the tooth, kind of moving past his prime there, but definitely someone you could see the Bulls center a deal around. In Boston, I think Vooch works there, so it'll be an interesting one to follow. As far as another team, moving into a team overview for the Bulls here as we move through this week. The Phoenix Suns, they're picking at 29, so just a slot below Boston there, late in the first round. They were said to be very, very active in phone calls and trying to connect with the Bulls and trying to bring in Vooch this past year when the Bulls were kind of shopping him. It didn't work out, and it makes you wonder, will that philosophy for Phoenix just completely change with Durant being out the door? And then, that organization is a complete mess at the moment. Hard to believe considering they made that finals run just a few years ago with Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. It's hard to believe that they have taken that turn, but will they be interested in Vooch? That's another thing to keep an eye on. I think snagging a late first-round pick is something the Bulls could benefit for. If it's going to be Phoenix or if it's going to be Boston. And then if they don't want to give up a ton of assets for a later round pick in the first round, then you could do that with these teams. I think moving up the board higher than 12 is going to take a little bit more out of your pocket if you're the Bulls. And, we've said this, but they're building towards the next few years here. And I think next offseason is when you're really going to see AK try and make a splash when it comes to free agents. So, kind of picking at the end of the first round here and what these assets are, what these teams hold in terms of picks make a lot of sense. So Phoenix and Boston, two teams to also keep an eye on as we move closer to draft night there. I personally would like to see the Bulls add a veteran to kind of carry things here. I know that they may be frowned upon by a lot of Bulls fans. I know, some of you guys have expressed your displeasure with moving on from a young guy like Kobe White, and that he's the best player on this team at the moment. And there's other Bulls fans out there that want to trade everybody. There's people that want nothing to do with anybody on this roster other than probably Modest Buzelis, which makes a lot of sense too. There's a lot of frustration built up in Bulls fans, me included. I want them to get back to prominence here. I want to see them be a top 6 team in the East. I'm sick of playing in the play-in tournament. I want to see them commit to a direction and commit to something that this organization can build upon in years to come. And I think, the domino to watch here is Josh Giddey. What they do with him and the direction they head on a player like him who's due for a deal will speak to what they're kind of thinking elsewhere. So, you got some veterans and Lonzo Ball that could be moved as well. I know they just locked him up, and he was talked about being moved as well. I know, like I said, last year they were taking calls on Vooch. They were also taking calls on Lonzo. So signing him to that 2-year deal, the 1 year is an option. So flexibility there when it comes to that move. I've talked about him moving back to LA, and if the Lakers want to make a play on him, the Lakers are also a team to watch with Vooch, Lakers and Warriors. So Vooch is going to have a lot of suitors. The guy's talented, had a hell of a season with the Bulls, was very productive. So stock's pretty high for a guy on he's got 1 year left on his deal, and then somebody will probably give him a new contract there. So something to watch there. Got a lot of exciting things I hope you guys enjoyed today's show, and we will see you next time on Bulls Latest. I hit that like and subscribe button, and have a good one.